How did it appear in Daluo? Lu Jiujuan almost vomited as he looked at the wriggling insect. Snake-attached insect. I seem to have seen it somewhere. I regret it. I clearly remember that the medical book written by my master listed the ingredients of poison, one of which was snake-attached insects. The poison makers would grind the raised snake worms into a paste and then mix it into medicinal materials for refining. Since the snake worms themselves are highly poisonous, combined with various other toxins, the poison was difficult to detoxify back then. After being bitten by a snake or insect or accidentally ingested, the person will experience high fever and abdominal pain, and eventually die from damage, corrosion, and failure of the internal organs. All the basic symptoms are met. Moreover, this insect is hard to find and hard to breed, and it will die soon after leaving the snake's body. The snake-attached worm in my hand is very fat. It must have survived to this day by parasitizing in human internal organs. Because of this, the patient's internal organs were all corroded, and he is now beyond recovery. Since it contains the element of regret, the antidote for regret will probably be useful in curing the insect poison. To put it bluntly, the antidote for regret is to fight poison with poison. Some of them are highly toxic. If they are used directly on insect poison, it would be inappropriate. As if he understood what I was thinking, Xie Jian expressed his concerns. While I was surprised that he knew this, it did remind me. Now I can only try slowly. Did the bug get into that person's body accidentally, or was it planted on him intentionally? Lu Jiujuan asked with disgust as he looked at the bug sealed in the wooden box. I don't know either. That person was sent here from the East District just the day before yesterday. In less than 3 days, his internal organs were eaten away by these bugs. It's really pitiful. Thinking back to his painful and twisted appearance before his death, I couldn't bear to think about it again. But Sonnen said that the poison was in the well water. Could it be that the murderer threw the poisonous insect into the well and the person drank it by mistake? This poisonous insect doesn't seem to be very poisonous. It's just that it's not poisonous enough to poison more than 700 people if it's put into the water. I am also very curious about the murderer's method of poisoning. Speaking of which, General Xie has not looked better since this morning. I know he is tired and worried, but there are too few people available right now. If he collapses from exhaustion, it would be a waste of time. Why don't you go and persuade him to take a rest, General Liu? Xie Jian's expression in the morning was even scarier than seeing a ghost. Lu Jiujuan put the medicine jar in his hand back on the stove and sighed helplessly. That's a mental illness. Rest won't help. I didn't say anything, only heard Lu Jiujuan say, "Can your Jishatang cure heart disease? If you mean angina pectoris or something like that, my third brother is very good at it. If that's the case, it's easier to deal with." Lu Jiujuan sighed again. A friend of Xie Sunan once died of regret. He probably remembered this. The old friend has passed away, so why worry about him? I advised him the same, but our General Xie is so deeply in love that he has been trapped in regret for 3 years. To put it bluntly, the girl's death had nothing to do with him, but fortunately, he is in a better state after returning from the palace a while ago. What did you say to him? Just say a few words to comfort him. In fact, it was a strong dose of medicine. What words are so effective? You said General Xie regretted something. What exactly did he regret? Obviously, he and I didn't have a close relationship at that time, so no matter how you look at it, it wouldn't be enough to make him regret it. Since you know all this, I might as well tell you. It would be even better if you could comfort him and make him see things more clearly. Lu Jiujuan whispered in my ear. She was poisoned by the antidote he found. I was shocked. Lu Jiujuan said that in the 3rd year after Su Yining married into the Marquis's mansion, Xie Jian joined the army, climbed from a small soldier to a commander, and then applied to go to the northern frontier. The reason why Su Yining was poisoned was that during the autumn outing, an undercover foreign agent lurking in Beijing broke into the venue. The undercover agent went straight to Mo Yao and shot him with poisoned arrow. The scene was in chaos, and Su Yining took Mo Yao away in the chaos. It was unknown how she managed to save Mo Yao, but she herself was stuck in the quagmire. After learning about this, Xie Jian had been looking for an antidote. Later, he heard that the poison often appeared on the northern border, so he decided to join the army. But what he didn't expect was that not long after he handed the antidote to Mo Yao, Su Yining passed away. It was said that it was a problem with the antidote. What I heard from Lu Jujuan was completely different from what I knew. Was it Xie Jian who obtained the antidote? I still remember Mo Yao's expression as if he was seeking credit. He said I could be saved, but he didn't tell me how to save me or where the antidote came from. So I naturally thought that he had worked hard to get it. Although death, in the end, is a problem of the antidote, it is a problem of not having the antidote, not a problem with the antidote. I just felt like countless needles were hitting my heart. Seeing that I didn't say a word, Lu Jujuan sighed again. Later, Mo Yao carried his wife's corpse and begged all over the city.
You've heard about this, right?
Sunan felt even more guilty when he found out. Mo Yao resented him for squeezing him, but he didn't care and always gave in. It's just that he has calmed down now, otherwise he would have fought back long ago. Miss Su's death has nothing to do with General Xie, I said. Of course it has nothing to do with him. I told him a long time ago that there was no problem with the antidote, but he refused to believe me. Since then, he has been fighting desperately on the battlefield. I even suspect that he wants to follow that woman. Lu Jujuan's words were neither light nor heavy, but every word hit my heart hard. Then he went to Fuyu Temple? Yes, it was also for her. Lu Jujuan said. After he gave the antidote to Mo Yao, he returned to the barracks. In a fierce battle, no one in the Chongjing army died, but they were all injured. He was the most seriously injured. The doctor said that if the arrow in his chest had shifted an inch, he would have died. Xie Sunan survived, but after returning to the capital, he heard that Madame Mohu had died, and he went crazy. He prayed to the gods, hoping that the woman would come back to life. Later, he heard that the Fuyu Temple was particularly effective, so he climbed up the mountain, knocking his head 3 times with each step, hoping that the woman would be reborn into a good family and live a happy and healthy life in the next life. This is what makes him really crazy. There was a boiling sound on the medicine stove, and I took the prepared medicine to each camp to give it to the soldiers. This is not a new prescription and can only have a temporary suppressive effect. When I met Xie Jian on the road, he had a sad face and was in a bad mood. Dr. Xiao, how is the new medicine going? He walked over and asked. It has been prepared, but the dosage needs to be adjusted after the human body reacts. However, this may require human testing. The test subjects must be patients, which means that if we want to know whether the drug is effective, we must let those who are already suffering bear the risks of testing the drug. If you are lucky, you will succeed a few times, but otherwise you will have to try hundreds or thousands of times, which is really cruel. Dr. Xiao, I know you have some concerns. Why don't you let me get infected with the poison first, and then you can use me to test it? Thank you, General. I interrupted his thoughts in a harsh voice. You are too tired. Go and have a rest. You're already talking nonsense. Patients are not divided into different classes. If Xie Jian himself suffers from this disease and is willing to try the medicine, I will naturally not refuse. But if a healthy person is asked to put the cart before the horse for this, I will not agree even if he is willing. General Xie, you are so tired that you are talking nonsense. Go and have a rest. Dr. Xiao hasn't had a good rest for several days. I'm young and can endure longer than you. Xie Jian took the medicine bottle from me and said, I will go and feed the soldiers with medicine. You can go and rest. After all, you are the only doctor now. If you fall down, the Chongjing army will be powerless to save the situation. Combined with Lu Jujuan's words, I found that Xie Jian might have excessive guilt and thus developed self-destructive tendencies. I thought about it and decided to just explain everything to him. It would be better than letting him be shrouded in false regret. Xie Jian, actually Dr. Xiao. A voice came from behind. Song Yan waved at me weakly and walked up to me with a firm look in his eyes. Dr. Xiao, let me try the medicine. Song Yan originally worked in the Imperial Medical Service. After working there for 3 years, he was transferred to the military camp to serve as a military doctor. There are 10 military doctors in the Chongjing military camp. Song Yen is their leader. Since the outbreak of the epidemic, several people have been busy and overwhelmed. Even though they have taken precautions, they are still unfortunately infected. So they have to send a letter to the deputy general, who is far away in Tianhan Mountain. I was in the pharmacy, boiling the prepared medicine, feeling nervous. If it works in one go, the dosage can be adjusted according to Song Yan's symptoms, and maybe the epidemic can be resolved quickly. But if you can't, I restrain myself from imagining the outcome. Dr. Xiao, you don't have to worry. Since we are treating the disease, we will have to go this far anyway. Song Yan comforted her instead. I heard from the general that you learned from Qin Baiguang. You are so calm and composed at such a young age. You are really a young man to be feared. I picked up the medicine bowl, but saw Song Yan looking at the sky far away outside the camp. His eyes seemed nostalgic, yet extremely sad. He must also be afraid of the unknown that will come next. I handed the medicine to him, but Song Yan didn't take it. He just stared at the medicine bowl without saying a word. Dr. Xiao, the patients who were coughing up blood a few days ago are now more stable. Do we need to reduce the dosage of the medicine? Xie Jian's voice came from outside. Song Yan's calm eyes finally moved. He looked up at me with a deep gaze. I'm sorry. He rushed forward, and the freshly brewed medicine soup and the clay bowl shattered to the ground. There was a sharp pain in his wrist. Song Yan's teeth sank deeply into the flesh. He vomited blood in big mouthfuls, and all the movements were done in one go in an instant. By the time I reacted, Xie Jian had already subdued Song Yan to the ground. Song Yan was still vomiting blood. His symptoms were obviously mild, but at this moment he suddenly became seriously ill. Xiaoningxi, go and wash the wound. Xie Jian pulled me up from the ground and anxiously took me to the water tank to wash the blood on my wrist, which I couldn't tell whether was from Song Yan or myself. The hand clenched on the arm was shaking. I looked at the water tank that was dyed red and finally understood how Song Yan had poisoned it. The disease progressed faster than I expected. 2 hours later, my forehead began to feel slightly hot. Xie Jian panicked and said he would take me out of the camp and find a random clinic for treatment. I am different from those soldiers who drank the blood of the poisoned. My wounds came into direct contact with blood, and it was Song Yan's blood that I swallowed directly after stealing the poisonous insect. Lu Jujuan stopped Xie Jian's impulse. The prince has already issued the order. Even though he is trying to stop us, if we really break out, we will be disobeying his order. I agree with him. If we rashly leave the epidemic area, even if there is a reason, we may be charged with deliberately spreading the epidemic. Xie Jian's face was gloomy and his fingers were clenched. Song Yan died before he could be interrogated, and the only words he left behind were sorry. No one could have imagined that the murderer was from the West District, let alone that he was the imperial physician of our dynasty. I wanted to comfort Xie Jian, but I was too dizzy to speak. After I had arranged everything, I fell into a deep sleep, not knowing whether it was due to illness or fatigue from days of hard work. In the dream, I seemed to have returned to 3 years ago. I dreamed of my hometown in Jiangnan and my parents who had passed away many years ago. I also dreamed of my uncle who treated me like his own son and my brothers and sisters in the yard. I think my life as Su Yining was quite happy before I was 16. The scenes in the dream were like a kaleidoscope of events. Before I could come out of the beauty of the past, I was already at Xuanyang Marquis Mansion again. As an outsider, I watched myself trying to please Mo Yao and old Madame Mo. After marriage, Mo Yao lost some of his gentleness and patience and mostly ignored my courtesy. I saw him throw away all my light-colored clothes, burned all my precious medical books, and hugged me to comfort me that I would have another child. I couldn't empathize with the heartbroken me in that dream. There is only a fine line between love and hate, and the accumulated hatred completely erupted on the day my uncle was exiled. I finally remembered that what destroyed my love for Mo Yao was not Su Yangyue's attempt to usurp my throne, but his determination not to even open the door when I knelt at the door of his study for 3 days begging him to let me see my uncle for the last time. My internal organs were aching, and it seemed as if I was back to the days when I was tormented by regret day and night. I struggled to wake up from the dream. My forehead was wet and cool. Under the flickering candlelight, I saw Xie Jian's haggard face. Why is General Xie here? I wanted to stand up, but found that my limbs were weak, and I didn't even have the strength to support my body. How do you feel? Xie Jian's voice was a little hoarse. I remembered trying the new remedy before going to bed. I shook my head. It doesn't seem to work. I need to adjust it again. Xie Jian lowered his eyes and said nothing. He had not slept much since returning to the military camp, and he looked several years older than before. Miss Xiao, I know that an apology is useless, but… Thank you, General. I thought this day would come when I agreed to join the military camp. I sighed. I made this decision after careful consideration. General, don't mind. Xie Jian didn't say anything else. He picked up the scarf on my head and threw it into the basin again. I raised my eyes and stared at his face. Whether in my dreams or in my memories, my impression of Xie Jian was very little. What's wrong? Xie Jian asked, noticing my gaze. Su Yining's death has nothing to do with you. Xie Jian was slightly startled. He didn't expect me to suddenly say such a thing. Miss Xiao, do you want to comfort me again? The corners of his mouth rose slightly, revealing a hint of bitterness. A few days ago, I saved a girl. She was the sweetheart of young Marquis Mo. I had heard about young Marquis Mo seeking medical treatment all over the capital, so I asked her some questions. She told me that she was also poisoned by Yu Hui, but she was saved. It was the only antidote that Mo Yao accidentally found that saved her. I told a little lie. I originally wanted to tell Xie Jian my true identity and then tell him the truth so that he would no longer suffer, but I am now uncertain whether I am alive or dead. If I tell him now that I am Su Yining, I am afraid he will fall into self-blame again. Xie Jian was stunned on the spot, and it took him a long time to come back to his senses. He forced a smile on his face. How is it possible? That's the truth. I sighed. Why don't you go ask Mo Yao after this? Who did you give the medicine to? I thought Xie Jian would be relieved after hearing these words, but he seemed to be in a trance. No, I am still the one who killed her. It really wasn't you, how could you? I was the one who gave her the invitation to the autumn outing that year. My heart skipped a beat. When I first came to Yunjing, apart from the Hu brothers and sisters, the only Yunjing person I knew was Mo Yao. When I received the invitation with my name on it, I naturally thought it was from Mo Yao. It was also at that time that I mistakenly thought that Mo Yao was interested in me, so I did not reject the proposal from the Marquis mansion. If I hadn't invited her to the autumn outing, she wouldn't have fallen into danger, let alone risked her life to save others. Xie Jian's tone was calm, but the pain and heaviness in his eyes could not be concealed at all. You invited her. Why didn't you tell her? I had no recollection that Xie Jian was on that autumn outing. I don't dare to talk to her. Xie Jian was a little embarrassed when talking about this. She didn't even know me. Maybe she knew me. We had met a few times, but she seemed to be afraid of me, so I was embarrassed to talk to her. Xie Jian's brows were rarely relaxed, and his expression was very gentle under the candlelight, as if he was trapped in the memories of that year. I was indeed afraid of him back then. When I first came to Yunjing, I was timid and hesitant to do anything. Who wouldn't be afraid when Xie Jian stood on the street and joked with everyone he met? As far as I know, Miss Su hardly ever leaves the house. What do you like about her? This is also a question that has puzzled me. Love at first sight. To be honest, it's quite vulgar. Perhaps sensing the subtlety in my eyes, Xie Jian coughed twice uncomfortably and explained. You haven't seen her. She's the kind of woman that makes people miss her after seeing her for the first time and lose their appetite. She always stands there coldly, as if she has no interest in anything, but she is curious about everything. Whenever she sees something interesting, her eyes become lively, and people can't help but want to know what her interests are. My heart was so clogged that I felt aggrieved and wanted to cry. I like her very much, even though we didn't have much interaction. I don't know why. Xie Jian's eyes dimmed. Later, She married Mo Yao. In fact, I had already seen that she liked Mo Yao, but I didn't want to believe it and kept deceiving myself with her ridiculous excuses that she had no vision. Don't mention it. She now feels that she is quite blind. Speaking of which, she and Miss Xiao have one thing in common. Xie Jian smiled sincerely. A dimple formed on her lips. She also likes to read medical books. I even stole many medical books from the old man's study and anonymously sent them to Xuanyang Marquis' mansion. It's you. I couldn't help but scream out loud, and then I suddenly realized that my words might have exposed myself. Fortunately, he was immersed in his memories and didn't notice. Autumn outing invitation, medical book, unknown antidote. How many other things did Xie Jian do secretly? Later I heard that she was not happy with her life after marriage. Now I often wonder if my past actions may have affected her. What's the meaning? When I was young, I stole the marriage lock. She hung on the marriage tree, so. I couldn't help but burst out laughing, but this laughter pulled my trachea, and I started coughing uncontrollably. Xie Jian quickly stood up and calmed me down. I'm sorry, I accidentally immersed myself in the past and disturbed your rest. Stop apologizing, you're taking too much blame on yourself. I finally caught my breath and stopped coughing. General Xie, you should go and rest soon. You don't have much rest time to begin with. If you collapse, we will be leaderless. Xie Jian changed the basin of water and placed it on the stool beside the bed. Thank you for listening to me. There are people guarding outside. If you feel uncomfortable, call them. Xie Jian walked out of the tent. I blew out the candle, and the darkness made me fall asleep quickly. I had a few more confused dreams. In my dream, I was standing under the marriage tree, and purple sleeves were fluttering behind the trunk. But one night, my symptoms became more severe. I started vomiting blood and had abdominal pain. He fell into a coma while vomiting a pile of black blood. I vaguely felt that I was being carried on someone's back. Xie Jian wanted to take me out of the camp, and Lu Jiujuan couldn't stop him. I've already told you that if you rush out now, they will only be more wary of you. Do you want to hear rumors that Prince Anjing is ignoring the imperial authority? Lu Jiujuan, is the reputation of the palace more important than human life? She is only 14. I tried to lift my eyelids, but I couldn't. I brought her here. Xie Jian said. I failed to protect her. It's my incompetence. I will bear all the consequences. Get out of the way. I couldn't hear what they were saying anymore. When I opened my eyes again, I was still in the military camp. The difference is I saw the master. The master had white hair and beard. He sat beside the bed and smiled kindly when he saw me wake up. My child, you did very well. Thanks a lot. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer, so I threw myself into Master's arms and burst into tears. Master said I was in a coma for 7 days. The epidemic in the military camp has been resolved, thanks to the last prescription I wrote. Master made a slight change in the dosage, and the soldiers showed noticeable improvement within a few days after taking it. While Master was talking, I saw the imperial physician organizing his medicine box. Master, how did you get in? Wasn't the road to the camp gate blocked? The master sighed and told me that he and the imperial physician did not come together. 7 days ago, Master arrived in Yunjing before the city gates closed. When he returned to Jishidiang at night, he found that there was no other doctor except the handyman. Just as he was about to go to the branch library to take a look, he met Xie Jian, who looked exhausted. Xie Jian explained the situation to him and took him to the military camp. The two men hid all the way, not taking the official road, and took a long detour before reaching the rear of the military camp, where they climbed over the wall to get in. Fortunately, General Xie brought me here in time. If it were any later, you would have died. The master sighed, and then I saw that there were many silver needles stuck in my arms. Dr. Xiao, you finally woke up. A familiar loud voice was heard, and Lu Jiujuan, completely changing his previous tired look, ran in with a rosy face. He bowed to the master, turned to me, and said, You don't know, you have been coughing up blood every day these days. I wonder how your small body can spit out so much blood. How did the imperial physician get in? Could it be that the road has been unsealed? Lu Jujuan smiled mysteriously. How do you think I became a soldier? Can I really lock myself up in this epidemic area with no way out? I can't figure it out, Lu Jujuan explained. After his request for support was rejected by the crown prince, he returned home and informed his father, Grand Tutor Lu, of the matter. At that time, no news had been received in the capital, and even Grand Tutor Lu could not rashly bring up the matter in front of the emperor, not to mention that the emperor was ill and had not been able to attend court for many days. But now that the matter has been brought to the attention of the crown prince, he will inevitably take action. No matter what decision he makes, Master Lu only needs to inquire about it. After a few times, all the court officials will know about it, and it will not be possible to hide it from anyone. What Lu Jujuan was betting on was whether the prince would abandon his reputation in the court in order to eliminate Prince Anjing. After all, his actions were really inhumane. Originally, Tutor Lu had been nagging the prince for several days, but the prince remained unmoved, and he didn't even inform the imperial hospital about the epidemic. Until another person appears. Who is it? I couldn't help but wonder. Lu Jujuan smiled slyly. Your father, Duke Xiao. The night I went to the military camp, the Xiao couple saw that I had not returned home yet, so they sent someone to find Zhishidiang, but they only saw the letter I left telling them where I was going. Mrs. Xiao was almost going crazy with anxiety, but she was afraid that if she forced me to return to Beijing, I would think that they did not support my ideals, so she waited for a few days at home. Later, when Duke Xiao heard that the prince had sealed the official road to the military camp, he furiously broke into the East Palace and questioned the prince. The prince then realized that his cousin Xiao Ningxi, who was a few years younger than him, was also in the military camp. Therefore, under the pressure from Duke Xiao and other ministers, the prince had no choice but to open the way for support. This matter makes me laugh and cry. Now that the epidemic is over, can I go home? I left in a hurry and was so busy when I arrived at the military camp that I forgot to tell my family. I was afraid I would be scolded when I got back. The master was about to speak but stopped, and Lu Jujuan's smile also disappeared. The atmosphere suddenly became a little weird. Although the soldiers in the epidemic area have recovered, the poison in your body has not been completely eliminated. I was stunned, but then I heard Lu Jujuan say, Song Yan spat more than just blood on your wound, and poisonous insects. Song Yan, you are so cruel. Why are you pretending to say sorry to me? When my master said that I almost lost my life, he meant that the bug almost drilled into my heart. Once it had drilled in, even a god couldn't save me.
It's really scary to hear it now.
Thank you very much, General, for bringing you here at that time, I said. You have more to thank me for than just this. The master took back the silver needles from my wrist one by one. This insect burrowing into the human body is like raising a poison. If you want to cure it completely, you must force it out of the body. I will make a wound on your wrist and let it flow out with your blood. It's just that we're still missing one medicinal ingredient. It is the gallbladder of the frost snake, which is found only in the bitter cold land of the northern frontier. Xie Jian set out for Saibei 4 days ago, promising his master that he would return with snake gall. Now the ice and snow are beginning to melt, and the northern part of the border is half a year later than the Dallas solar term. At this time, I am afraid that the snakes are still hibernating and are not easy to find. Yun Enk said that he would protect your life to the end, and left the city without saying anything else. After the acupuncture, the master went to visit other patients, leaving only Lu Jujuan and I in the tent. He doesn't have to do this. I know Xie Jian still feels that he dragged me into this dangerous situation without my permission, but it was clearly my own request. Come to think of it, I just found out from Sun and that you are only 14 years old. Lu Jujuan's words were very out of character. Seeing you so calm, especially being able to arrange things after falling ill, I thought you had already reached the age of marriage. It seems that you are more mature than us. Yeah, I just had this thought. To be honest, sometimes I even think you are in your 20s. How do you manage to look so old at such a young age? Lu Jujuan laughed. Or did you go through the gates of hell when you came back from the dead and become indifferent to the world? General Liu, has anyone ever told you that you are noisy? I feel like my ears are getting calloused. That's too much. I do talk a lot, but I can't say I'm noisy. But since you asked, I'll answer your question. My status is not as noble as Sunan, but I'm also the son of the Grand Tutor, and I was a companion to the sixth prince in the palace when I was a child. Maybe others wouldn't say anything to me even if they think I'm noisy, but when I was 15, someone did say I was noisy. Guess who it was? How should I know? Su Yining. Lu Jiujuan's eyes once again showed temptation and cunning. You know who I'm talking about, right? The air was silent for a moment. For a moment, I didn't know whether he was calling me or asking whether I knew who Su Yining was. Lu Jiujuan's eyes curved into crescents. The answer was self-evident. This guy is so smart. Why did I think he was just a cynical second-generation rich kid? How did you find out? Stop pretending, let's get real. Perhaps he didn't expect me to admit it so readily. Lu Jiujuan was surprised. Really? I nodded. There really is such a thing as possessing a dead body to revive. He was clearly the one testing me, but he was frightened instead. It's not really a discovery. I just felt that you and Su Yining were similar in some way. And you were always so sure when it came to whether Su Yining's death was related to Sunan. It was probably just a hunch. I just wanted to trick you, but I didn't expect it to work. Lu Jiujuan looked at me excitedly. So, how did you die?
He died.
Xie Jian's antidote never fell into my hands. Mo Yao gave it to his sweetheart.
What?
Then why is he still begging for medicine with your dead body on his back? Lu Jiujuan was very confused. Maybe he wants to put on an act for outsiders. After all, everyone in the capital says that young Marquis Mo is the most infatuated and righteous person. Thinking of the script in the tea house, I couldn't help but sneer. Infatuated? Benevolent? And Lu Jiujuan also sneered. Miss Su, don't trust him. He found a concubine not long after you died, and he found one who looks like you.
Ah.
I find Mo Yao more and more disgusting. Miss Su, Lu has something to ask of you. Lu Jiujuan suddenly changed his tone and said, Tell Sun and the truth. He went looking for the antidote for you. I don't want you to repay him. It's just that he did a good thing, but he was deceived by the truth and regretted it all day long. This is not fair. General Liu, I don't want him to live in regret just like you do. I said, I told him the night I was poisoned that I didn't die at his hands, but I just used someone else's mouth to repeat it. I wonder if he believed it. Lu Jiujuan seemed to want to say something but stopped himself, barely retracted his gaze, and continued chatting with me about this and that. My arms felt numb at night, and I always felt like ants were crawling in my flesh. Thanks to my master's acupuncture treatment, the poisonous insect was trapped in only one of my arms. I hope it's a male insect. Otherwise, if it lays eggs in my body, I really would want to cut off my arm. It takes at least 15 days to travel from Dalu to Saibei and back. Xie Jian hasn't had much rest since the outbreak of the epidemic. What if he gets tired on the road? I heard that the bitter cold land is mostly steep mountains. The snow in the northern part of the Great Wall hasn't melted yet, and there are strong winds. If you accidentally slip on the way up the mountain, I dared not think about it any further, for fear that this thought would turn into a curse. I looked at the flickering flame on the table and recalled the scene when Xie Jian and I chatted that day. I even saw Xie Jian's face in the candle flame. About 3 days later, because the master had to continue with the acupuncture, I was always drowsy during those days and would sleep for several hours at a time. I heard someone say in a daze that General Xie was back. It's only been 7 days. How could it be so fast? I heard Master calling my name, but I couldn't open my eyes at all. That's good.
She's asleep now.
I'll give her some Ma Fei San. It's better than being woken up by the pain in the middle of the night. The master's words were somewhat vague. Is she okay? I heard a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. I tried hard to open my eyes and finally saw a ray of light. I smiled when I met Xie Jian's eyes. The drug took effect, and I fell into a deep sleep again. It is roughly the same as the treatment for regret, and its essence is to fight poison with poison. However, poisonous insects are living creatures and often live in snake gallbladders. The gallbladder of the Qingxuang snake caught by Xie Jian is its favorite place to parasitize. Therefore, if you put the snake gallbladder on the wound that the master had cut to draw blood, the poisonous insects will smell it and come. I slept for 3 full days before I finally woke up. The master said that my body was fine and that I was lucky. Originally, the 7th day was the last day he could stop the poisonous insects from entering my heart meridian, and Xie Jian happened to rush back on that day. There's no need for us to worry about you in the barracks anymore. Once you've recovered for a few more days, we can return to Yunjing. The master covered me with a quilt and put away the medicine box. Master, have my brothers returned to Beijing? They are back. All the doctors who were sent out from Beijing are back. If you count carefully, these doctors have been seeing patients outside for a month. I thought I would ask what happened after returning to Beijing, and Lu Jujuan happened to come over and answer my question. Those doctors went to provide support in remote towns. There were indeed many people suffering from fever at the same time, but it was not serious. Lu Jujuan whispered, but the local prefect did not allow these doctors to return to Beijing. Why is that? Maybe they want to keep it a secret until the storm has passed. Lu Jujuan added, Miss Xiao, the symptoms of the poison on the human body are really different. For example, you were directly exposed to the poisonous insect, so you were already critically ill in just 12 hours. But the soldiers drank the blood of the poisoned, and their symptoms were not as serious as yours. After all, the blood is diluted when it is dissolved in water, so the toxins are relatively lighter. Lu Jujuan rolled his eyes and said, You said that the civilians also had high fever symptoms, right? Isn't it the same in the military camp? Well, the symptoms among the common people are much milder than that pandemic. They are not even on the same level. What if it's diluted with more water? I was stunned. You don't mean to say that someone is using them to do? Lu Jujuan interrupted quickly. I didn't say that, I just guessed. And it was such a coincidence that a large-scale fever had just ended among the people, and an epidemic quickly broke out in the military camp. And His Majesty suddenly became seriously ill at this time. I dare not think about it too much. By the way, where is General Xie? I haven't seen Xie Jian these days since I woke up. Do you have something to discuss with him? Lu Jujuan smiled meaningfully. I nodded. I want to thank him. Lu Jujuan smiled even more brightly. Don't thank him yet, it's not too late to listen to me about what happened in the city recently. After Xie Jian returned from Saibei, he rode back to Yunjing at full speed. At that time, Xie Jian had been released back to the palace by the prince. The prince claimed that he was reminiscing about the past with Xie Jian and did not admit that he was under house arrest. In fact, he just wanted to warn Prince Anjing indirectly that his 2 sons were in his hands. Xie Jian wrote letters to the emperor several days in a row. Since the snakes and insects came from the northern border and were used by Song Yan in the Chongjing military camp, it was hard not to suspect that someone was colluding with the enemy. This is a huge hat. When the emperor learned of this after his condition had eased, he became furious and questioned the prince why he did not report the matter at the beginning and why he did not send a royal physician to the epidemic area to provide reinforcements. The prince said that the emperor's illness was urgent, and the doctors in the Imperial Medical Bureau were all busy taking care of the emperor. They had no energy to devote to the Chongjing military camp. He also said that there were doctors from Jishidiang and military doctors there, so he thought it was not urgent. The prince's tricks were really clumsy. How could the emperor not see through them? The matter of collusion with the enemy had not yet been settled, but since suspicion had been aroused, there would definitely be a day when it would be discovered. Guess who the prince put the blame on?
Who else could it be?
Of course it must be the young Marquis Mo, who was used as a knife. Song Yan's wife and children, who were rescued, insisted that it was Mo Yao's men who kidnapped them and threatened Song Yan to do things for him, and they also found border letters in Mo Yao's study. After being translated, it was not considered as collusion with the enemy, but just a letter to contact merchants who privately sold snake-attached insects. The emperor was furious. He didn't expect that Mo Yao would be so ignorant of his own limitations and attack the entire army just because of his grudge with Xie Jian. Now that there is evidence, Mo Yao was sentenced to death and imprisoned. Xuanyang Ho's family was implicated and exiled to the frontier. The prince really has the heart to do this. Lu Jiujuan sighed. After all, Mo Yao has helped him a lot, not to mention that Xuanyang Ho is the cousin of the crown princess. He really doesn't care about our feelings at all. After this farce, Prince Anjing suffered heavy losses in his troops and Marquis Xuanyang was completely overthrown. Prince, your method is not clumsy. I roughly understand it, but what does this have to do with my wish to thank Xie Jian? Lu Jiujuan. Mo Yao died because of this, don't you hate him? He brought this upon himself. I have suffered so much now. I really hate Mo Yao to death. Lu Jiujuan smiled even more. Well, the borrowed eyes are indeed different, but it will take a few days for him to return to the barracks, just in time to catch up with you before you leave. Lu formally expresses his gratitude to you, Dr. Xiao. Before leaving, Lu Jiujuan bowed to me solemnly and thanked me. Thank me for saving the soldiers infected with the epidemic. Thank me for enlightening Xie Jian. 2 days later, I saw Xie Jian outside the tent. I felt a little embarrassed when I saw him, but Xie Jian came forward and greeted me generously. Dr. Xiao, are you well? Yeah, totally fine. I paused and said sincerely, Thank you, General. Thank you for finding the medicine for me. Lieutenant General Liu said that you lost 5 horses along the way and worked day and night to get back 7 days ago. I really don't know how to thank you. Xie Jian smiled. Don't say that. It was because of me that you were involved in this life-threatening situation and were accidentally injured by the villain who wanted to get rid of Chongjing. This is what I should do. I feel relieved that you are fine now. After not seeing each other for a few days, Xie Jian became more polite to me. The military doctor came over with a medicine box and looked at Xie Jian. General, it's time to apply the medicine. Is he injured? Xie Jian nodded and said goodbye to me. I looked at the military doctor and said, I still have something to say to General Xie. Let me give him the medicine. Xie Jian didn't say anything, and the military doctor handed me the medicine box. The deputy general's tent is larger than an ordinary tent. Xie Jian took off his shirt, revealing shocking old wounds all over his strong back. The new wound was 2 inches below his collarbone and was about 6 inches long, running diagonally to his shoulder. The northern frontier is dangerous and time is so tight. How could Xie Jian return safely? I took off the old gauze, dipped some powder on my fingertips, and gently applied it to the wound that had not yet healed. Xie Jian's warm breath sprayed on my head. The distance was quite close. General Xie, did you not care about your own safety and fight the enemy on the battlefield? What do you mean? I've heard that martial artists are bound to get injured in battle, but the location and size of the wound can be controlled. This is especially true for a general who has fought everywhere. He must know this technique. But your wounds are all in the most vulnerable places. A slight mistake could lead to your death. I paused. Why do you have to do this, General? Xie Jian didn't say anything, but looked down at me for a long time. Miss Xiao, did you see Naiha? His question was confusing, and it took me a moment to realize that he was asking me about what I had told him that day in the palace. I didn't see it. After all, I was still holding my breath. Xie Jian smiled and said, You said that people's longing would prevent the dead from crossing the river, but I was on the verge of death several times and never saw her. Or is it because I didn't miss her enough that she has already been reincarnated? It's just that few people in the world care about her. There is only Xie Jian. I was in a state of anxiety and was not in a hurry to leave after tying the gauze. Thank you. You saved me. Xie Jian put on his clothes and said nonchalantly, Why are you thanking me again, Miss Xiao? You said it was me. No, that's not what I meant, I interrupted.
Thank you, Jian. I mean, you really saved me this time.
As soon as Mrs. Xiao saw me, she hugged me and cried. Sire, why have you lost so much weight? Oh, my darling. I thought she would scold me, but she didn't. Mr. Xiao taught me sternly. Next time you go out, be sure to tell your family. Do you know how worried your parents are? I nodded repeatedly to admit my mistake. Seeing this, Duke Xiao smiled and patted my shoulder. As expected of my daughter, Xiaozheng, you are so courageous. My nose was sore, and I sobbed into Mrs. Zhao's shoulder. Su Yongyue had woken up a long time ago, and the wounds on her body had healed, but the wounds were too deep and still left scars. She looked very haggard and thanked me repeatedly when she saw me. I heard from the doctor at Jishidiang that you were the one who insisted on not handing me over to Mo Yao and brought me to Shao Mansion to recuperate. Yongyue would like to thank you again. Su Yongyue said this and then knelt down and kowtowed. I helped her up. Her arms were frighteningly thin. I will have the Duke's Mansion's carriage take you back to Jeju in a few days. The Su's cloth shop is there, right? When Su Yongyue mentioned going home, tears welled up in her eyes again. She said that she had been imprisoned by Mo Yao for 3 years. During these 3 years, every winter she would be whipped with a long whip by him, and her limbs would be cut with a knife. He would apply medicine after each cut, and the wounds would always open and close and open again, over and over again. Su Yining died in winter, so Mo Yao tortured her in winter. Go report to the police, I said. Although Mo Yao has already been sentenced to death, he probably wouldn't mind having one more charge. Su Yongyue shook her head. She didn't know that Mo Yao was in prison. He's right. I owe this to Miss Su. I took Miss Su's life, so I have to repent for her. Looking at Su Yangyeweken's painful smile, I didn't feel happy at all. The weather was just right the day we saw Su Yongyue off. Miss Xiao, when I return to Jeju, I will definitely send someone to send you the best cloth to repay you. She looked up at the sky and said sadly, I will never come back to Yunjing. Back then, she was expelled from Yunjing because she loved Mo Yao too much, but she came back because she couldn't let him go, and thus began 3 years of torture. Su Yongyue said that after Su Yining died, Mo Yao regretted it. He regretted choosing Su Yongyue and regretted not saving his wife. Su Yongyue said that Mo Yao often quarreled with his wife, but he was always happy. He loved Su Yining, but he realized it only after her death, so he took out all his anger on her. I don't think so. She felt that Mo Yao loved me because he took his anger out on her after my death. But if Mo Yao had chosen me back then, he would have been angry with me after Su Yongyue's death. Things become precious only when they are lost. People will miss you, so the memories will be beautified. Only after I died, I became the person that Mo Yao could not shake in his heart. Even if we had hysterical quarrels, he would still give it a halo. The same logic applies to Su Yongyue. On the day of her coming of age, there was a light snow in Yunjing. It's early spring, and the snow came in a strange way. I didn't expect Lu Jiujuan to come to visit. He brought a thank you gift, saying it was from King Anjing, but he was far away in Qizhou and couldn't go in person to express his gratitude. Miss Xiao, what do you think of Sunan? As expected, I guessed right. Lu Jiujuan came here just for this matter. When he learned that I had confessed my identity to Xie Jian, he thought that there would be some progress between us, so he urged Xie Jian to come to my house to propose marriage. Unexpectedly, Xie Jian told him not to talk nonsense. I don't understand it either. Sunan dreams of marrying you, but now he is unmoved. I think the problem may be with you. Lu Jiujuan asked, don't you like him? I do have a good impression of him. No one would remain indifferent after knowing that he has done so much silently. I don't owe Mo Yao anything, but I owe Xie Jian too much. Isn't that just mutual affection? Isn't that perfect? But it's because I owe him too much that I can't respond to his feelings rashly. I said, I can't tell how much emotion is mixed in this affection. If I stay with him because of emotion, it will be too unfair to Xie Jian. Lu Jiujuan seemed to understand. I don't mean to use morality to coerce you, but do you have to think so complicated about this matter? If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. I like Xie Jian. But this love is not enough to keep me trapped in the inner house. It is not enough to respond to Xie Jian's deep affection. In the evening, Mrs. Xiao and I sat on the couch and embroidered. Sire, I never thought I would see your coming-of-age day. Madame Xiao sighed. Your health was too poor. When you were born, you were shaking like a quail. I was so scared that you would die just like that. I didn't expect that the little girl would grow up like this. Not only is she healthy, but she can also practice medicine. During my time as Xiao Ningxi's daughter, I personally felt the love that the Xiao couple had for their daughter. But I can't face their feelings. I'm a liar, not their daughter. Mom, actually? Look, the snow has stopped. Madame Xiao stood up and walked out. It's really strange that the snow is falling. I hope the newly sprouted willow branches will not be frozen. I never mentioned it again after that. This mother must have noticed it a long time ago. The day before Mo Yao was to be executed, he escaped from prison. I thought he was trying to give himself another chance to survive, but I didn't expect him to come to me. He broke into Jishitang in public and kidnapped me during the chaos. Where is Su Yangyue? Mo Yao was disheveled and looked extremely miserable. Even his prison uniform had holes in it. A month ago, he was still looking down on everyone with his superiority. Mo Yao took me to a thatched house somewhere and threatened me with a broken porcelain piece against my neck. Tell me where she is. Otherwise, I will kill you. You tortured her like that. What are you still looking for her for now? I really don't understand why Mo Yao looks like he wants to commit suicide for Su Yangyue. She deserves it. Mo Yao sneered, the porcelain pieces digging into my flesh. She must atone for Ninger's sins. If I die now, she won't be able to live in this world. Even if I have to go to hell, I will make her crawl to Ninger and beg for her forgiveness. Ninger, it's so annoying to listen to. Mo Yao, you asked Su Yangyue to atone for her sins. Don't you need to ask for her forgiveness? This is also the question I have always wanted to ask him. Didn't you give up Su Yining yourself? You made the choice. Why are you hypocritically blaming others? Su Yangyue is, and so is Xie Jian. Those who have no guilt feel sincerely apologetic, while those who have guilt try to shirk responsibility. He tampered with the truth and misled Xie Jian, making her think that I died because of him. He was hypocritical and tortured Su Yangyue, blaming all the mistakes on the woman who seduced him. Mo Yao's eyes were red with anger, but I didn't intend to stop provoking him. You don't really think that the problem between you is Su Yangyue, do you? Mo Yao, stop pretending to be affectionate. If you hadn't saved Su Yangyue, Su Yining would have been imprisoned and tortured by you. You don't love anyone but yourself. That's enough. Mo Yao grabbed my neck fiercely and yelled, What do you know? Ninger loves me the most. She won't blame me. She knows I have my reasons for doing this. She will understand me. It's crazy. I held onto his clenched fingertips, and I heard footsteps outside. I sprinkled patchily along the way. It was impossible for the people from Jishitiang to not report me when they saw me being abducted. In addition, there have been soldiers patrolling the streets since Mo Yao escaped from prison. The door of the thatched house was kicked open, and Xie Jian rushed up and knocked him to the ground with a punch. He was the person responsible for escorting Mo Yao. After learning that Mo Yao had escaped, he had been searching for him in the city. Are you okay? Xie Jian looked me over with concern, his eyes finally falling on my neck, which was scratched by the porcelain fragments. Then he punched Mo Yao in the face again. Mo Yao was beaten dizzy. After he regained consciousness and saw Xie Jian wiping the blood for me with a handkerchief, he laughed wildly. Ninger, did you see that? Xie Jian has changed his mind. He claimed to love you and never marry for the rest of his life, but he still fell in love with someone else. Mo Yao's eyes were red, and he looked at Xie Jian provocatively. Xie Sunan, I married her before you, and now I will also meet her before you. As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Yao quickly picked up the porcelain piece on the ground and stabbed it into the artery. Blood spurted all over the wall. He leaned back in comfort, murmured and sighed. Ninger, I can finally go down to see you and the child. This time our family of 3 will be together forever. It is said that when a man is about to die, his words are good. Perhaps Mo Yao was sincere in what he said. But I can't bear to see him dying like he thinks he's doing it in a carefree way. You can't see her. I watched his blood gushing out onto the ground. I've been back for a long time. His eyes, which were originally closed, suddenly widened, revealing incredible despair. He opened his mouth to make some sound, but in the end, he could not say anything and could only stare at me motionlessly. The Mo Yao I mentioned. I leaned close to his ear and said what I had said to him 3 years ago. I hate you so much. And when the willow trees grew leaves, Xie Jian came to say goodbye to me. I will welcome you in the city on the day you return victoriously. Xie Jian smiled. He said that he often dreamed of me crying to him and resenting him for killing me. Later, after hearing Wang Chuan's words, I would dream that I told him to stop missing me because my boat had sunk. Xie Jian, I often wonder, there are so many dead souls in this world. Why did God choose me to be reborn? It was not until Lu Jiujuan told me that you had knelt in the mountain temple to pray for me that I realized that this opportunity was obtained by you. Xie Jian was stunned and pursed his lips shyly. I owe you too much, so much that I can't even pay you back. I thought about it and said, until I fulfill my filial duty, I will stay in Yunjing. If you still want to marry me, just come to my house and propose marriage. I will definitely. Aining. Xie Jian's voice was as gentle as the ripples caused by a stone thrown into a stream. You don't owe me anything. I did it all willingly. Besides, a woman doesn't have to give herself to someone in order to repay him. I know you still have things you want to do. You want to travel around the world like Mr. Chen, taste all kinds of herbs, and write medical books? I don't want to trap you in the backyard and waste your life. Two people who love each other don't necessarily have to be together. You don't have to feel burdened by this. The bugle call sounded, and the city gates were opened. The Chongjing army regrouped and marched towards the border where the enemy was ready to attack. I suddenly remembered what he said the day I told Xie Jian his identity. I'll tell you, 3 years isn't long. Extra. In the 4th year after the Xiao couple passed away, Su Yining embarked on his own journey. Before she died, Mrs. Xiao held her hand and looked at her face with affection. For many years, Su Yining never thought of telling them that he was not Xiao Ningxi. Madame Xiao knew. She knew that the person in that body was no longer her Sarah. But when we're alive, there are some things that we don't need to get to the bottom of. Thanks a lot. The last words Mrs. Xiao left for her. Su Yining was already 25 years old at that time. Years of study had made her a superb medical skill. There were even people from other places who came to her specifically to ask her for treatment. It was also in this year that she bid farewell to her master and senior brothers and left Yunjing to do what she had planned long ago. During the day, she traveled through mountains and rivers, climbing mountains to collect herbs. At night, she stayed up till dawn by candlelight, writing medical books. When she was resting, she would think of Xie Jian. She always says goodbye and see you again. Now she is traveling around the world. I wonder if Xie Jian can still find her. 5 years ago, Prince Anjing passed away and Xie Jian succeeded to the throne. Xie Jian naturally became the leader of the Chongjing army. The emperor delegated power to Xie Jian, but Xie Jian lived up to the trust and made many military achievements. Dalu ushered in a prosperous era. Until a year ago, the emperor passed away and the prince ascended the throne. The first thing the new emperor did when he took office was to take back Xie Jian's military power. A big tree attracts the wind. A tree with great achievements overshadows its master. The previous emperor didn't care, but the new emperor does. Xie Jian's situation became dire, and he seemed to be forced to retire. Su Yining once received a letter from Xie Jian. There were many daily trivialities written on it, and one sentence made Su Yining laugh and cry. You save the world, I save the country. We are a perfect match. Lu Jiujuan couldn't understand why the two of them liked each other, but didn't get together. He was annoyed to death seeing Xie Jian grinning foolishly at the letter sent by Su Yining all day long. Xie Jian said, whether Aining wants to get married or not, I can't marry her. Xie Jian knew very well that he had been fighting for many years, and his life was like a flame swaying in the wind. He didn't want his Aining to end up as a widow one day. What's more, Su Yining has firm beliefs, and she has things she wants to do. Aining, your previous practice was really not in vain. Lu Jiujuan still remembers the scene when Xie Jian was 15 years old and frantically practiced greeting Su Yining at home. Xie Jian always felt that the title, Miss Su, was too unfamiliar. Lu Jiujuan just laughed at him without saying a word, let alone how to address him. Xie Jian heard Mo Yao call her Ninger. After much thought, he decided to call her Aining. Unfortunately, Xie Jian was timid and only dared to call her Miss Su when they met. But every time he called her Miss Su, he would silently add Aining in his heart. Now he could finally call her Aining openly. You don't have to worry about being disliked by her, nor do you have to worry about others calling her affectionately. When Xie Jian was 34 years old, he resigned from his post as general. The new emperor expressed hypocritical regret, saying that Dalu had lost a great general. Xie Jian had no regrets, as he believed he had done his best for his country. It was also in this year that Lu Jiujuan got married. The bride was a girl picked up from the battlefield. He talks more than Lu Jiujuan, and the two of them in the same frame are like a dozen sparrows. Xie Jian sincerely wished his good brother happiness. Looking at the full moon, he wondered if Aining was also looking at the moon. Lu Jiujuan came to him half drunk. Miss Su. Lu Jiujuan smiled slyly. Do you want to know where she is? Xie Jian's eyes lit up, and he nodded repeatedly. Lu Jiujuan handed him a note and burped. Don't tell me, brother. I was only concerned about my own happiness and didn't think of you. The place where Su Yining went to collect herbs this time was a deep mountain. For convenience, she rented a small wooden house at the foot of the mountain. Except for the many mosquitoes, it is very comfortable. She had only written half of the medical book, and she still needed to travel to more places and see more herbs. Su Yining walked back down the mountain and saw smoke coming out of his house from a distance. It won't catch fire, will it? She ran over quickly, nervous and anxious, and through the wooden fence, she saw a tall and burly man in the yard, busy with something. The man heard the sound and turned to look at her. His handsome and mature face was covered with soot. He scratched his cheek awkwardly and smiled at her sheepishly. Can I follow you to help the world? End of full text.